Alright, today we're going to be disassembling a Shimano Caenan 150. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is take the spool out. I'm going to do that by flipping this open switch underneath the reel on the palm side and then rotating down. The side plate comes out, the spool comes out. And then what I'm going to do next is take this bearing out by removing this retainer clip. So next I'm going to start to disassemble the handle side of the reel. First thing I'm going to do is remove the screw that keeps the nut cap on the handle here. Then I'm going to take the nut cap off. Next, I'm going to use my 10mm wrench to take the nut off while holding down on the star drag. Take the handle off. Now right here, I'm going to take my time to put my finger on top of this black round plate while I lift up on the star drag, because there's a click pin and spring in here which are extremely tiny. If you can see this click pin right here, there's a small spring on it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this plate back on. And I'm going to set it down. Now next, the spring that was underneath the star drag comes off. Then there's a nut right here for the drag system. I'm just going to use a crescent wrench to break it loose somewhat. Take that off. Then I'm going to take this top washer off, and then these two drag washers off. Put all that together. Now next I'm going to take the spool cap off. There's a spring under here, and I'm going to rotate it out. Put that back in the cap, set that aside. And in here is a bearing. Take that bearing out. Next I'm going to remove the handle side plate. The first screw that I'm going to take off is from the inside on the bottom or towards the front of the reel. I'll take that screw out first, and then I'm going to work my way clockwise to take these 3 screws out, starting at the top. Counterclockwise, starting at the top. One. 2, 3. We'll set the reel down and lift up slowly on this plate. Now the reel side plate is off. While I have the reel side plate off, since I just took it off, I'm going to pull this sleeve out, which goes on the drive shaft, and I'm going to push this one-way clutch bearing out. I'm going to need to inspect this pretty closely because my customer said that he was having problems with this anti-reverse. So I'm going to have to give it a good cleaning and check it out. So nothing else is inside of this plate. That's done. The first thing I'm going to do now that this handle side is open is I'm going to take the 2 springs off the post. I'm going to take these 2 springs off here, set those aside. I'm going to pull the drive gear off of the drive shaft. Inside of this drive gear is the top metal drag washer, and underneath that, kind of stuck to it, is the paper drag washer, the felt drag washer. Now this metal washer has a curve to it, or a cup to it, which doesn't seem to want to show up too well on the camera, but if I lay it down upside down, you can see it wants to rock. So that's it upside down. Underneath here is the other drag washer that goes on top of the dog. Let me zoom out a little bit here. This dog gear. So that's the order that it needs to be reassembled in. So next I'm going to take a small screwdriver and I'm going to lift up on the yoke and pull the yoke and the pinion gear out. From there, I should be able to flip back over to the palm side and take this screw out that's still holding the faceplate on. Oh. Drop that screw. So I'm going to take that screw out, set it aside, and then I'm going to be able to pull the faceplate off. So from here, I'm going to start taking the brake system off. What I'm going to do first is I'm going to lift up on this spring to release some tension. Then I'm going to take these 2 screws out that are holding the post plate in place. Fell through. I'm going to take the post plate off. Now I know inside of this post plate there is a ring. If you can see that ring. There's also a bearing under here, but I'm going to take that out in a minute. I'm going to use my my little screwdriver to take this cam off. And when I take this cam off, there's going to be the kick out arm was fitting in this post, and that spring was connected to that kick out arm. Set that aside. Okay, next I'm going to take the drive shaft off, and I can see that there's a good bit of grease on top of this screw here. Now, take these two screws out. And then drive shaft should come out. Now on this drive shaft there is an assembly with a bearing on it, so I'm going to remove that C-clip. Okay. There's that C-clip. Take the C-clip off. There is a series of washers on top of that bearing. So the bearing had a brass washer on top of the bearing, and then this silver washer on top of the brass washer, and the E-clip was sitting on top of the silver washer. Set those aside. Pull this plate off, this mounting plate, and we can pull, oh no, I'm not going to do that. So right here, I'm going to leave this plastic gear on the drive shaft because I know that from the schematic, 2 corners out of the 4 where you can see it makes a square on the plastic gear. So this corner and this corner, there's a spring and a pin that's holding this gear in place on this square. I'm going to leave this as is. I don't want to take that off because it's not necessary. Okay, so now what's left in the body of this reel is this bearing. I'm just going to use this little punch, but you can use a screwdriver or something else to go from the back to push this bearing out. Now that bearing's out. Next, I'm going to start to disassemble the worm gear or the line guide system here. The first thing that I want to do is take this plastic cap here off so that I can take the pawl out. So I'm just going to use a flathead screwdriver to bust this cap loose. Now underneath this cap, it's going to be a small washer. If you can see that small washer. And then the pawl. Okay, next I'm going to go to the palm side of the plate, palm side of the frame of the reel, and in here there is, which is kind of dirty, but there's a C-clip there. I'm going to go ahead and remove that C-clip. So that C-clip came off. Now there's a brass washer here, so I just kind of line the brass washer up with the hole real well and then push the worm gear through it and then take that brass washer off. You can see that brass washer here. that was underneath that C-clip we just took off. Now the worm gear fell out of the opposite side. So we push this from the palm side, we push this worm gear shaft out. And then on this shaft, at the end, there's this keeper pin. I'm going to take that keeper pin out. This is important. Do not lose this. My tip real quick is that I work on several layers of paper towels, and what I do is I'll peel my paper towel back and I'll put this pin here so that I don't lose it. Now from there, you can take this white plastic gear off, as well as this white bushing, and then your drive gear is out for your worm gear. Okay, now that we got the worm gear itself out, you should be able to push on the shaft housing from the palm side of the reel. Push that through and it'll slide out. You're going to set that down, and the pin that it's now riding on is going to come out in the opposite direction through and come out of the palm side, and then the line guide is now free. You're really starting to see how dirty this reel is. I'm trying to get it out of the shadows here. So next we're going to want to take this pivot arm off, which is actually connected to the thumb bar. So now that the line guide is out of the way, we can reach a screwdriver through the body of the reel here. Take this screw out. And then the thumb bar will come off. The screw for it will come out. I'm going to set those aside. And then this pivot arm comes out. And then that's it. Now the reel is completely disassembled. If you notice sort of how I group all my parts as I take them apart here, up here I have everything that was outside, that was part of the handle of the palm plate. So all of this screw for the nut cap, the nut, the drag star, and the drag washers that were all outside of the body of the reel, as well as the spool tension cap. I have the screws that are part of the frame, or taking the handle side plate off of the frame, as well as the faceplate screw. Then I have everything that was on the drag system with the drive gear and the drag washers. This is the drive shaft and everything that was on the drive shaft, the bearing, the screws, the mounting plate, the E-clip. Then here's everything that came out of the worm gear here. And then here is over here is everything that came out of the cam and brake system, including the thumb bar and pivot arm. And now I'm going to clean the reel, and when I come back, we're going to reassemble it.